Hey, everybody, welcome to the Ronline Report. Today's guest, I can't believe I have not had on until now because, man, I've been doing this Ronline Report thing for like 3.5 years. This is a guy I worked with in MD for many years. You know him by many names, the pro creator. He's the owner operator of Evogen Nutrition. He's one of the greatest coaches in the bodybuilding industry. Please welcome all the way from California, Hany Rambod. What's up, man?
Hey man, thanks for having me, Ron. I know we've been talking about doing this for a very long time.
No, like I said, I can't believe it. I think I've done like 300 of these, and I've been wanting you on for quite some time. So thank you for finally doing this with me. I'm trying to make myself not orange because I don't know how to color correct the camera. I'm not that good. But man, first of all, welcome and California. I want to wish you safety because I know you're in that Bay Area and the wine country in the Bay Area. This everything's on fire, correct?
Yes, we've got a ton of fires. It all started about 6 or 7 weeks ago with lightning storms, and there was over 500 wildfires from the lightning storms. Then they got better, then it got worse again, and then they got another set of fires this last week and a half. And there's been days where it literally looks like it's been fogged in, but instead of fog, it's literally smoke. Where you go outside, you have to make sure you just wear a mask to pick up the mail. So
Wow.
it's been just between that and then the lockdowns and everybody else. The gyms were closed up until a couple of weeks ago.
Mm.
Now in the Bay Area, the gyms are at 10% capacity. So if you have an exercise studio that's got 100 people limit, you get 10 people in there. If it's a 50-person
Wow.
limit, you get 5 people. So they're getting ready to hopefully open that back up, but it's just right when you think things are getting better. The governor just mentioned that they want you to wear masks in between chewing food at a restaurant. I know everybody who's heard about it is laughing, but it's just one of those things where I know everybody's trying to be protective, but at some point it becomes a little bit too much.
I
So
agree. I agree. It's but you don't know which extreme to really be in favor of because then I've been to some places, I won't say where, but restaurants were like business as usual. Like there was nothing, there's no virus. People are jam packed and
yes,
breathing and coughing and laughing. And I don't know if that's the answer either, but let's move on because I don't nobody wants to talk about this crap anymore. We're all sick of it. This is the longest year in our human history, I think, 2020. It's actually been
absolutely.
5 years long so far. Did you know that? But
Yes, dog years.
So, of course, before we get into Evogen, your podcast, everyone wants to know about two gentlemen. You're going to be prepping for the Olympia.
Yep.
The most exciting news of this year in bodybuilding was Phil Heath saying he was going to come back and do the Olympia. Everybody was stoked. I don't care if you love Phil Heath. I don't care if you hate Phil Heath. You want Phil Heath in the Olympia. If you're a bodybuilding fan, I want Phil Heath in that Olympia. It's a much better Olympia with Phil there. And so let's backtrack to last year. We were hoping he was going to compete, of course, and he didn't. Did you know all along that he wasn't? Because Phil always kind of was like not as bad as Kai, who waits until like three minutes before the show to say, "Just kidding, guys, haha." But Phil waited till very late in the game to let us know he wouldn't be competing. Did you know for quite a while he wasn't going to do the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I knew that Phil where he was leaning towards, but leaning towards and where his final, decision is has can be very two different things. Even with this show, it's one of those things where he decided I want to do the show, but it was one of those things that was up in the air up until several months ago because he has so many different things going on. He's got Phil Heath Labs, he's got Gifted Athletics, he's got all these businesses that he's working on, and when it comes down to it, it's not just as simple as let me just go sign up for a show like it is with a lot of other bodybuilders. When you have your own brands, there's a lot of things. Obviously, they just announced, now it can be discussed, the documentary with the Rocks team and Danny Garcia and Seven Bucks Productions, and that's a big deal. So they're going to be doing a documentary. All of these things are weighed in, and I'm sure at some point you guys are going to talk. I know you guys have done interviews before, and but at the end of the day, there's a lot of variables that go along with it, not just the training and what would you like to do as a professional bodybuilder, but all the other things that have to fall in line as well on the business side.
Yeah. Well, the thing is I guess it's silly for people to wait to get all their business things going until after they're done competing because then it might be kind of too late and they're trying to play catch up. It's great that he's doing all this now, but at the same time, he's turning 40 very soon, is he not? Or is he already
No, he's
40?
actually going to be 41 the day of the show.
Okay, wow. Happy birthday, Phil. So, I mean, clock's kind of ticking. And, I know he's gone on record a couple times saying he doesn't want to just tie the record of Ronnie and Lee Haney of 8. He wants 10 titles, which, man, I'd love to see that, because it would kind of bum me out if no one ever breaks that record of 8 wins. Because, like, come on, guys, come on. I know it takes 9 years to do it, but still, if anyone can do it, he's already got 7. No disrespect to anyone else, but Phil at his best, I don't see any of these other guys, even Brandon, who I think is great, and these other guys, they're tremendous athletes, but Phil was just so dominant. The only one I ever saw give him a hard time once he had really come into his own was Kai. And Kai's history, I don't think we're ever going to see Kai again.
Yeah, but those were epic battles, Ron. I mean, you got to remember, Kai is arguably one of the best competitors to hit the Olympia stage ever. I mean, and he's just, the guy is a freak. And so they had some really, really epic battles, both on stage as well as at the press conference.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I wish he would come back, but yeah. So like I said, he wants 8. Now this year he was going to do, I think it's called the Icon Classic. Is that's the name of the bodybuilding component of the Rocks Athleticon weekend?
I think that was all speculation. Everything about the whole Icon thing was all pure speculation. So everybody really fed into that because they thought that because he was being managed by Danny, that it was just an automatic thing. And absolutely, it can be the farthest thing from the truth. What it was, at the end of the day, Phil Heath is counting Olympia titles. So, even though we're talking about it after the fact, his eye has always been, if he's going to do something, it's Olympia. I mean, he's won 7 titles. So you can't, there's only been Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the only other 2 people that have been 8 is Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman. Right. So his whole, mental state was to be able to eventually try to match or possibly, like you said, surpass. Right. But it's one of those things that when you really look at it right now, a lot of people thought that because somebody on YouTube took a little bit of information, try to piece it together, and they were going to do this or that. And I think that was all just conjecture and speculation.
Yeah. I've never had the chance to ask you about the 2018 Olympia. I'll make it very quick. Did you have Sean Roden beating him at that show?
No.
No.
I mean, personally, again, I know why the judges picked the way they did. And obviously I'm biased towards my client, Phil Heath, but I thought it was very simple. I thought that, as he was getting fatigued on stage, his weak body part became weaker. And I see what the judges saw. But at the end of the day, did I think that it was enough for him to lose? No, I didn't think so. But what's my opinion? I'm not a judge. So, this is the first time I'm actually doing an interview regarding it. But to be very straightforward, no, I thought that he had enough, arms, shoulders, back, chest, separation, fullness, 3D look, all of those things. And then Sean had him in the midsection. Yeah. So I didn't think that it was, but again, it's not about my opinion. It's about the judges. But I didn't think it was that clear cut. But obviously for them it was, and it's okay. And now you got to just go back and do it. It's all, we're in a very subjective sport. And I feel that I've always tried to pull more objectiveness into judging, where you turn around and you say, okay, what are these body parts? What about these other body parts? What about these other poses? And one thing that I do, and I explain this a lot during my seminars when people ask me, how do you break down physiques? And I always look at certain poses also that are just slightly better than somebody else's versus how is the overall package? What is it that someone's bringing to the table that is so much better than the person next to them or not? And that's that, again, what's the muscle separation like? How is the conditioning? How is that roundness? And sometimes some people get so round that it's not conditioned. So it's a balanced effect so that you need to bring to be able to really show something that most people are not used to seeing. And that's why I think at the end of the day, you're trying to chase that photoshopped look where you've got those 3D muscle bellies and everything else that we've talked about for so many years with Phil, since probably, I would say, the 2008 Ironman.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going body part by body part, and like you said, okay, Sean had him on the midsection. No argument at all there. He did. But if you're going to go pose for pose and body part for body part, Roden's triceps, not very strong. Phil's triceps, among the best ever. Maybe Rolly Winkler is the only one who can give him a good run at that. Back, Roden's back was never like a real strong point. Phil's back, especially toward the last couple Olympias, last 2 or 3 that he won, it was just so bubbly and detailed and crazy. And I'm not a cheerleader or a hater for anyone really when you get down to it, but when people said, well, Phil was off, I said, off. And then Phil, in response, posted, I remember distinctly one photo. It was like his glute, his hamstring, and his calf, where the detail it looked just like it had been sharpened and photoshopped to hell, but it wasn't. I was at the show. That's what he really looked like. So, the judges did what they felt was right. So we're moving on. But the big question in everyone's mind is nobody's seen Phil's midsection aside from probably Phil and a couple other people close to him, such as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he would, knowing Phil, I don't think he would come back to the Olympia unless he was confident that it was back to normal. And I don't think he would coach him for the Olympia unless you felt that he was ready to come back with it. Because that's the first thing they're going to look at. First thing when he comes out, they're going to be like, his midsection's all jacked up. And they'll just write him off if that was the case. So I don't know how much you can give away or want to give away, but
obviously I'm not going to give away the farm here because that's for Phil to do. This is Phil's, time to shine, and his spotlight's on him, and how he wants to discuss that really should be done by him. But at the end of the day, is it something, he did have his surgery. He did after the last Olympia. He worked on the fact that he had retorn his midsection, and so those are things that are obvious for him that he needs to work on, and those are things that I think would like to can go into at whatever point he feels comfortable. So yeah, that's the thing. And kind of going back a little bit about body parts and all this other stuff, it really needs to be said that when people start to realize, because I think people are really with the internet and social media and everything, Phil has never, he's the first Olympia and only Olympia right now. I mean, besides Brandon and Sean too, now since the last 10 years, that have had to deal with the social media generation. And we never had that before. The big thing we had before was get big, right? It was like, I remember them, talking about Jay in 07, 08, and they'd put a picture of him on top of a refrigerator. You remember that? And they would, because, like, oh, he's so blocky. He should be sponsored by Whirlpool, I mean, whatever it was. And then, he came back and he was able to be able to do that. So I think now it's so much harder because, again, that was just a message board. And now you have this, mob mentality that people want to jump on something and say this or that, and then amplify the message depending on whose narrative it is and how it benefits them. So I think there's a huge difference between the last set of Ronnie's era of Olympia wins versus now. It's a huge different climate right now. I mean, I grew up in an era where Dorian Yates was all about covering up. He didn't have to go anywhere. He didn't have to do anything. Right. The sponsors only cared about you winning the Olympia. Now you're constantly under a very myopic view and a microscope. So it's very, very different in this day and age versus what it was even 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, today the fans that are young now, they'll never really be able to comprehend just how different it was. And in a way, it's better because they have access and they have instant contest coverage, and they get to see these guys training every day in meal 4, meal 5, and I woke up at 3 a.m. and pissed, and they know everything about these guys. We didn't know anything. We saw them at the shows if we went to shows, and in the magazines, most of the pictures were just taken right around the contest. We knew nothing about their personal lives really a lot, and yeah, these guys. So Phil and the other champions, Brandon doesn't seem to have as much hatred directed at him. I honestly, I go back to that Generation Iron movie. I really think that made him a villain in a lot of people's eyes.
100%.
I saw that movie and I knew Phil a little bit, but after when I watched that movie, I was like, "Ooh, Phil, you jerk! Oh, I hate you." You know, he just came across like such a douchebag. But it was a movie, guys. It was a docudrama. It wasn't a real documentary. And it was a character basically they came up with. They
Well, and
tried.
that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. People don't understand that they had him act a certain way so that they can create more drama. The only part of the documentary was there was a show
Yeah.
and Phil won. Those are the,
Right.
those are the things. And it wasn't by one point like they said it was.
Yeah.
That was made up because you can go
Hmm.
back and look at the scorecard. And it was almost like Phil Heath was supposed to be kind of the villain, and then Kai Green was supposed to be Rocky.
Yeah.
But imagine Rocky without Rocky winning. Kind of a shit movie, right? And
They
that's where,
also they also made Kai out to be like impoverished, like living in the projects, which I think he did maintain an apartment in some place like that. But if you added up, someone actually did the math on this. His money, his
Mhm.
contracts. They said no, he was far from broke when that movie was filmed. But
Yeah, I think when the movie was formed, he was driving an Escalade and had $1 million home or something, from what I
yeah,
heard.
right,
So,
right.
and between all the contracts, he was at $1 million, 800,000 to $1 million+. So again, at some point in his life, did he have to do that? Absolutely. At one point in life, he had a very rough life. But during that time of the shooting, was that the case? No. Was Phil being asked to be a little bit more over the top and Arnold-esque? Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, I was always worried about that movie and how the narrative was going to be. And now we knew he was supposed to be kind of the arrogant guy. Hey, play that guy. And then on top of that, if you add in the fact that anybody, you can ask Jim Mannion, Steve Weinberger, whoever, anybody who keeps winning at some point goes from the hero to the villain.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
don't care if it's Tom Brady, I don't care if it's Kobe Bryant, I don't care if it's Michael Jordan, because people get tired of watching a guy win.
right.
So what ends up happening is it's just natural that you get that way. Ronnie Coleman, same thing happened. In the beginning, everybody loved Ronnie.
Yeah,
And it would have happened with Jay. It did happen with Phil. It happened with Ronnie. And when you start to build a dynasty like that, people are just like, okay, let's move on. I want new blood. Because when Phil first came out, I mean, the guy was the golden boy,
mm,
the green-eyed golden boy. It was like,
mm,
great, this is awesome. And then the thing that turned it was what you just said, the
yeah,
movie. And the
yeah,
movie turned it, and then people thought that that was real. And then all of a sudden, then it just started going into that negative space. And then with him continuing to win, then that was also kind of also it was just a downhill spiral at that point in
yeah.
regards to the fans' eyes, because they don't know who the real Phil Heath is when it comes to watching a movie, a docudrama, as you put it.
Yeah, and we love underdogs. We want to root for the underdog. And when Jay beat Phil in 2010, I distinctly remember half the audience got up and they stormed right out of that auditorium. They were pissed off,
Yep.
and that set up. Phil Heath when he came out in 2011, it was like the second coming. Man, everyone was like, "Wow," because
Right.
he
And how
had it.
fun
It was
was
it was
that for
clear.
me when I was training both of them, right?
Yeah, that's
Their
right.
number, So in 2009, people thought that Jay Cutler wasn't even going to be in the top five.
Mm,
I remember Muscle Time said he wasn't even going to be top five. He should just hang it up.
wow.
And not only was he not in the top five, he was not only did he win, but he came in at one of his best looks, if not the best look ever, because you see that foot stomp picture.
Yeah,
So at the end of the day, his fans were recharged, and then a bunch of people that were either haters or not fans at the time all of a sudden were like, holy shit, Jay's one of the best bodybuilders in history, because we were able to see top to bottom, front to back, a complete look. And again, I was very blessed to be a part of his team and doing that in terms of, I mean, he had to put in all the hard work. I did the easy part. But at the end of the day, I'm super proud of that moment. But when 2010 hit, he went from, like you said, the whole crowd going nuts that Jay came back and he looked so crazy, to 2010, where what you're saying is the observation was half the crowd was happy that Jay won, the other half was upset that Phil didn't.
right.
So
Yeah. And the last Phil related question I'll ask you is, how excited are you that he decided to come back? Because a lot of us were speculating maybe he's never coming back. He's like you said, he doesn't need to come back. He's got so much going on. There's no financial reason for him to come back. It's a nice payday, but he's got plenty of other things going on. He didn't need this. So when he told you, honey, I'm in, let's do this. What was your reaction?
yeah, my reaction, let's go, because I know that Phil Heath on can't be beat. I mean, he's one of those guys that if he comes in at that level that you just said, it's like apples and oranges.
Wow.
You know what I mean? But it's one of those things where, but me as a coach also, and my personality because we worked together for so many years. I mean,
Yeah.
since the early 2000s, I'm a person who tries to chase perfection with everything I do. And so, so I'm like, okay, this is, is this going on? Is that going on? How's the training? It's a bit different because normally Phil big and then we bring him down. This time he's growing into the show. It's a slightly different process, which there's many different ways to get to that end result. But it's one of those things where I'm just excited because I'm like, wow, I know what his ability is. And with an execution plan that can be followed properly, everything is going to be like, wow, it's going to be one of those things, wow moments. So I'm hoping that there's always a small bit of chance involved with a prep, but the hard work, you know what they say, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah. My favorite Hany Rambod athlete check-in story. Maybe you can tell me who the athlete was because I can't recall. But he told me I was so excited. I sent Hany some pictures and I thought my glutes were striated. And he texted me back, "Why is your ass still fat?"
Yeah, I think that's probably about a half a dozen people I can think of. I think it was like either Tamer or it was like it could have been one of the pros. But it was one of those things where that's happened several times where people go, "Oh, I see my glutes are shredded," and they send it to me, and I go, "Yeah, bro, I think that's a little bit of a stretch mark that you're seeing there. It's, one or two stretch marks. It's not really shredded. Let's get to work."
When
And
I see when I see people competing and they're out of shape, I'm thinking, and I know they were working with some big name coaches. I'm thinking, did this coach just keep telling them they look great? I mean, what was going on? It's clearly they weren't being that hard on this client. Either that or the client wasn't compliant, was eating donuts. I don't know. But okay, so Phil Heath, that's done. But we got to talk about the biggest hit of the Olympia last year, Hadi Choopan. Everybody was going goo goo over this guy. I was the first time I ever saw him in person because I didn't make it to Vancouver. What a freak. Third place, his first time at the Open Olympia, a guy that had been a 212. The fact that he even made it there, you said it was like that movie Argo. It was like crazy
it
how
was.
so many hoops had to be jumped through and things had to go just right. The first question is it going to be easier to get him into the USA this time or harder, do you
It's
think?
way harder, way
Wow.
harder, way harder. And let me explain to you why, because again, a lot of things that happened behind the scenes last year, people don't realize. And at some point, it would be good just to even go into that on its own. But just to keep things in a nutshell, last year, it was a very political thing where the Iranians were not allowed to come into the United States. And we ended up having to get a presidential waiver. This year, you have everything that normally happened because again, before he had tried to get in for 4 years and wasn't able to.
Hmm.
And then by the time we got him here, I didn't even let anybody know until he was literally in San Francisco
Right.
and had got him through because there's so few of these presidential waivers. So what we
I'm
did.
sorry, I got to interrupt. Did you actually get Trump's attention, or when you say presidential waiver, it sounds like the president signed something?
Yeah, well, the exact term that's used on the visa is it's a presidential waiver, meaning that there's a presidential proclamation that says it's not coming in, and that's been waived. So
Gotcha.
it's not going from what I know, going all the way to the White House,
Yeah.
but through the State Department, through the Consulate General of the consulate that we were dealing with. They have a process of reviewing the application, and then Evogen, his sponsor, which is obviously has a lot to do with saying, hey, look, there's a need here that we need to have our athlete to be able to show because it's part of our finances and how we are able to grow and be able to highlight our athlete.
Yeah.
So a lot of that had to be explained in a lot of different ways to a lot of different people in regards of, I mean, the paperwork stacks were like this.
Mm.
And everybody thinks, oh, it was this lawyer, it was this, it wasn't. It was his team and us working together, his personal team. And what we did was we were able to get all of the documents done and done them, we did them properly. And then whenever there was question or whatnot, being able to get them answered. But at the end of the day, who actually ended up signing off on it, we don't know. It could have went to the Trump and to the White House. Absolutely, it could have, or it could have been just the consulate general's personal decision. Again, we don't know the inner workings of the United States government at that level to know who's actually the guy that actually signed off on this in its entirety. But we're just glad it happened. Now you fast forward 12. We have that has to be done again, all that paperwork, because it was a one and done type of visa. It was to come in, to compete. He could stay for X number of weeks/months. We did that. He came in several weeks early, almost a month early. We were able to prepare him then. And then afterwards, we got some photo shoots done, and then he went back to Iran. Now, Hadi, this year, we have to go through the whole process again. And then on top of that, we have COVID. So the pandemic hit. Now, all of a sudden, governments are shut down, consulates are shut down, embassies are shut down, across the world. So you have so many different barriers. And then the geopolitical climate of the Middle East has changed because there's always stuff going on between countries in the Persian Gulf. Yeah. And so with all of those things also going on, so there's added layers on top of the already existing layers. So when you really break it down, it is much harder this year than even last year. And last year it was super difficult.
Because I had Tamara Gundy on about a month ago, and they had put out that post saying all Olympia competitors get in touch with us. We're going to get you over here. Just contact us. We'll tell you how it's done. And I pressed him on the matter. I said, "Come on, Tamara, how are you pulling this off? This sounds crazy." He said, "Well, they're all going to have to quarantine in. I'm not sure if it was only Mexico. Maybe it was Mexico and also Canada or something. But if you quarantined in Mexico for 2 weeks prior to whatever departure date you wanted to get into the U.S., then you could do that." So I'm thinking Hadi and all the other international competitors, aside from, I think Canadians and Mexicans are allowed to come across without having to do that. But I think most of the other international competitors are going to have to do something like that.
I think Canadians have to do that too.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, because for last I heard, I was asking somebody from that knows Regan Grimes, and I said, "Hey, is he doing the Chicago show, which is actually in Atlanta this year, right? Because of the whole COVID situation."
Right.
And because he's doing Spain here in the next 24 hours, I believe it's this weekend. And I actually did a rundown on the Spain show on my podcast. So that's up and live as of about an hour ago, because I did a little preview. And the answer that I got was he can't do the Chicago because he'd have to go back and he has to quarantine for about 2 weeks.
Right.
Again, that wasn't from him directly. That was from somebody that's close to him. So I'm like, okay, wow, that makes sense, because if they're wanting to minimize the likelihood of transmission, I could see them possibly doing that. So they couldn't just bounce from Europe to Canada to here. So I do think that there is some validity about people that are allowed in the United States are might have to quarantine in a neutral country that allows a visa through basically the 14-day quarantine type of situation.
Yeah. So he was what a debut for third place.
Yes.
For a guy who was probably about 220, 225. He's about 220 on stage, right? Somewhere around there?
Barely. Yeah.
Barely.
At the time, barely. Yeah.
I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, we haven't had someone of that weight and stature do that well at the Olympia in so many years. The guy was just a joy to watch because he's so humble and meek and mild mannered off stage. You'd never know that he had this brash, this confidence on stage, almost this commanding presence. He's fun to watch. I like how he does that thing where he puts the arm up before he hits the poses. He's a cool guy to watch compete. So, what has he been doing since then? Because he didn't have to qualify. Obviously, he's already qualified. Goals for Zeke. I mean, he looked phenomenal last year. Could he look better? What aspects were you guys focusing on this past year?
Bigger.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're focusing on bigger. Now, again, he's got a frame that you can't blow it out. Right. So you can't be like, hey, we're going to put 10 pounds on, because that's not going to be quality. So a little bit goes a long way on that type of frame. So we're not talking about a guy that's 6 feet tall. So it's not going to be this gigantic weight jump. It's just coming in and building up the body parts, bringing in, you know, more size through the chest, a little bit more thickness through the arms, working on some detail and bringing in some more roundness. It's all of those things that we're looking to be able to improve upon so that he can show a final display of a physically bigger. This is good conditioning, because I don't think conditioning can get that much better than where he was at.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say legs, because his legs are done, dude.
Yeah.
It's like Ramy. Ramy, your legs are done. Can you just stop training legs, please?
Yeah, but like Ramy's legs are big, but it's the separation
Yeah.
which really you need to dial in separate, because you can have big legs, so, you know, and that's kind of like the hit on Brandon, right? Like everybody talks about legs, legs, legs. And I think that what you got to really think about is it's not just leg size, it's shape. It's shape versus your own overall shape. These are things that you got to look at. It's not just, hey, are my legs bigger from the side? It's how does that outer sweep look? How's the detail in the mid thigh? How's that adductor look? How does that look compared to the rest of your body when you sit down and hit a front lat spread or a front double bicep? Because if you're hitting a front lat spread and you got this amazing upper body, but you've got legs, but they're not chiseled and they're not detailed, what ends up happening is you kind of lose the flow. And I think that was the big hit that a lot of people told me. They're like, God, I wish that, you know, Brandon had this or that or whatever. And I think that with Hadi, he had a really good complete look. And I think that's where a lot of people really valued what he brought to the stage. And they really kind of like, the competitors were front to back conditioning, top to bottom conditioning.
Yeah.
It was a certain level of graininess. So when you look at the guy that won, or even with William Bonnick, which and I like William, I love him to death, but I think that when it comes to some of that conditioning versus fullness, if you're not really spot on, when you're not super dry and separated, you lose that separation, and then you lose that visual 3D Photoshop look that I always, you know, say, hey, look, that's what looks wow, you know. And you know, Phil will tell you that, you know, way back when, I don't remember, 4 or 5 years ago, he always said, Bonnick, you got to watch out for what? You got to always watch out for Bonnick, because Bonnick is a guy that can bring that when he's dialed in. It's like, you know, and he can really pop.
Yeah, I mean, Hadi's going to have his hands full, because this is, you know, this is going to be quite an Olympia. Phil coming back, Flex Lewis coming into the Open for the first time.
For sure.
I'm sure he'll do well still, but this is, you know, if you mention any of these guys, it's going to be a tough battle. It's going to be, and that's what for the fans, you know, we win because we want to see. Like I just said, this whole it's sad that Ramy's not in the Spain show. I feel terrible that he got COVID and he prepped for nothing basically. But now it's going to be an exciting show, because now it's like, who's going to win? We don't know. When Ramy was in the show, unless Ramy showed up with like a leg cut off, of course he's going to win. He's Ramy. All right, let's move on to other matters. We got the athletes out of the way. How long have you?
By the way, just speaking of the Spain show, for all those competitors out there, remember, there's 3 guys that are all going to move up. So, you know what I mean? So, you know, like you said, theoretically, Ramy was not going to be out of the top 3 at the Spain show. It doesn't matter what he looked like. I mean, you know, he's that good. So that being said, that 4th guy just got qualified because Ramy is out. And unfortunately, I mean, we all wish him the best and hope that, you know, it's not anything major with his COVID test, because again, when I did the review, I did my review of that show before he announced that he tested positive for COVID.
So did I.
Yeah. but with Regan, Grimes, and some of these other new guys, it's going to be interesting to see how they do, because they're all going to qualify. If they're in the top 3, they're going to qualify for the Olympia. So that's going to add to the excitement.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Hany Rambod now.
Okay.
It seems that, you know, you've had Evogen now for, I want to say, almost 10 years. Has it been that long?
Oh, longer, 12. I started
12 years. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, at one time you never worked with hundreds of athletes or anything. You because, you know, you pay a lot of attention to each athlete. You would never do that. But there was a time when you worked with a lot of athletes, and pretty much anytime somebody was turning pro, it was most likely you were the guy that turned them pro. Have you moved, you know, what was the process like of moving away from coaching as Evogen started to take more of your time and energy away from that?
You know, what really happened was I was trying to do both. But the way I did it was I started Evogen it was 10% of my time, 20% of my time, and coaching was 80% of my time. And this is back in '08, because again, I was trying to build a name for myself. This is before all the Olympias and all that stuff. I mean, I had a couple of Olympias under my belt with some of the athletes before Jay, and especially with the figure and whatnot. And then what I started to see was that I had to balance, because I never, like you said, never had a ton of clients, because the way that I really dive into things, I like the check-ins. I mean, I harass them. Hey, where are the pictures? What's going on? You ask Jay.
Yeah.
I had to harass him, to pictures every day, doing this, doing that, making the changes. I mean, because I just want to be on it. I'm very on top of the clients. As somebody said a long time ago, Hany tries to ride you like Zorro. And, and that's what I got to do to get you into the end zone. That's what I got to do. So as the years progressed, I realized that it was a very slow growth. I was very comfortable with Evogen. And then in the last, I would say about 4 or 5 years, maybe a little bit more, what I did was I really switched the tone, where I said, hey, I'm going to flip flop this and do 80%, 90% Evogen, and then I'm going to do about 10 to 20% coaching. And that way I can try to build out the company, because we're growing internationally and all this, and really put more time and effort into those types of things. So what I did was I started working with less people, and still top people, but people go, oh, Hany only works with the best guys. Well, I'm only going to work with guys that are going to help with whatever. I'm not doing it for the money per se, because I'm trying to build up my legacy, which is Evogen. But what I was trying to do was trying to pick and choose, so that way we end up having a lot of, not, when I execute with a pro at a high level, they're going to follow what you're doing. But if you're bringing somebody in who just wants to pay you and get ready for a small or local show, not only does it not, sometimes not only do they not listen to 100%, because it's not their career, it's not, sponsorship money, it's all of those things that really make sure that they cross their T's and dot their I's. And I rather work with those types of people, so I don't get frustrated like I did early on in my career, where we all as trainers know certain people that aren't going to listen to you, because they want the easy way out. You tell them to do 45 minutes of step mill, they're going to do 25 minutes on the treadmill. You tell them to turn around and do 6 ounces of chicken or 8 ounces of chicken, they do 12, because they're like, I know my body. And it's cutting down the frustration of that and putting that time and effort into something else that I know is really growing. And as the demand started to really grow for Evogen and flavors and products, that's where I went from 4 or 5 SKUs to now we have over 80. And so, yeah, and we went from 5 or 6 countries to now over 30, 40 countries now. So it's one of those things where the company has really grown, because I've been able to make that shift. And you go, oh man, I'm getting thrown some really cool clients that are top 10 in the Olympia that are coming to me right now, and that I could work with, and I could try to go for number 20 or 21 on the Olympia trophy wall, and I'm at 19. But again, it's like quality over quantity with everything I do, whether it's Evogen, whether it's with the athletes. I've had a lot of people reach out to me that are really, really top athletes, and I just turn them away, because I have to pick and choose what the long-term solution needs to be. And I've been like that with clients, with the product line, with all the other projects I'm doing. My wife launched a new retail store, Nutrition Palace.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing. If you go to her Instagram page, Nutrition Palace, Farron is doing an amazing job with that. And being a chiropractor, being a UCLA undergrad, and also an figure competitor who won the overall in the San Francisco, she carries a lot of weight. And so I love supporting her, because she was there to support me while I was doing my thing. So that is a very major thing for me, is balance now, is trying to learn how to get balance. But it's literally, you have to earn it. I used, 19-hour days, 18, 19-hour days. You saw me traveling all around the world. Now I've got a 7-year-old son at home. I got a family. So I got to be able to balance a little bit more. So that's what it's really turning out to be. So I'm trying to make sure I have that balance now.
Yeah. I mean, how many clients can you realistically work with at a time now and still be able to do everything you need to do with Evogen?
It depends on the quality of client. Like if it's Olympia level, or what, like a top, national level, Olympia level, probably 5, 6.
Wow. Okay.
So a handful. And then I have companies that are clients that are CEOs of companies that I work with, that I do coaching with, and I have, probably just a couple of those, a handful of those. Again, it's more lifestyle coaching, life coaching, and being able to get them right. I did a really cool podcast just a couple of days ago with Andy Frisella, and I've been working with him for a while, and it's been a really great relationship because he's been able to go, help him through his journey. So doing those are almost as just important to me as somebody going out and placing top 5 at the Olympia, because this is a successful guy that makes hundreds of millions off of his supplement line and all the 20 plus stores he has, and being about that. I'm super excited when I see his check-in pictures, and just as much as somebody getting ready for the Olympia. So for me, those are the things that really help me feel like I'm accomplishing a huge goal. And instead of just, winning a pro card, it's really balancing all of that out. And but I still, love the sport. I still love the industry. I'm just thankful for Jim Mannion and the rest of the, the NPC and IFBB Pro League, because if they weren't around, we wouldn't all have jobs. And so, it really, it really helps our platform, everything from muscular development to what you do, to the promoters and all of them. So I'm super thankful that since Joe's passing, you have somebody who's passionate, and those type of people that are really taking that to the next level and trying to make it a more global organization. So going around and doing these different types of trade shows like the Dubai Muscle, and going into India with Sharu Classic, and going to Kuwait, and doing all of these things that I go around doing, it's not like work for me, because I love it so much that it's fun.
Yeah, I do remember Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, when he made a speech at the Olympia a couple years ago. I think it was 2018 Olympia? I forget I think it was 2018,
I think I was 17. It was the year
17.
before. Yeah, it was the last Olympia, I think, that Phil won.
Yeah, he thanked you on stage because you were coaching him at the time for getting him in shape for movies and stuff like that. Do you
Yeah,
still work? Do you still work
I
with
had the
Dwayne?
opportunity. No, I had the opportunity at the time to work with him. He was getting ready for Baywatch. I was brought into the team. Again, a guy like him is he is such a huge brand, and it's just everything else. But at the time, I mean, it's great. I mean, that's the kind of person he is. Dave Rienzi is his coach, Danny's husband, and and I personally work with Dave, so it's kind of our inner circle, but not directly anymore. But I did have a great opportunity and a great chance to be able to work with somebody who's just not just popular, but is a good person.
Yeah.
So I've been very blessed, man. I got to work with the best, Hollywood actor in the world. That was awesome.
I wish he would have ran for president. I'd vote for him.
You know what? A lot of people would. It's one of those things where, we got an election coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I don't like to dive too much into politics.
No.
But at the end of the day, everybody asks, is Dwayne Johnson that kind of person, or is he just a persona? And, he's that kind of person, man. The guy is just a legit dude. And he's not, he's farthest thing from fake.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I want to ask you, because, when we started talking many years ago, you were just starting to formulate your training system and all that, FST7. And when I first heard it, when everyone heard it sounded like such a gimmicky thing, FST7, like some infomercial crap. Did you ever think it would become the phenomenon? Because I know people that do sevens, and I don't think they even have heard of you or Evogen or FST7. They don't know what they're doing, but somehow it trickled down through the network, and I see people doing it, and I guarantee you, I'm looking at someone, I said, I bet they have no idea where that came from or what it is, but they saw someone else or they saw it on YouTube. Did you ever think it would catch on the way it did?
No. I thought that it was going to probably catch on with some of the other competitors once I started writing about it with you. When we would do feature articles on it in muscular development, I started working with Steve and yourself in 2003, and I think you came on board a year or two before that.
Yeah.
And when I started the Pro Creator column, that's what I was known for, right? Was turning people pro. I had Quincy Taylor, then Idris, USA overall winner, Idris Wardell, USA overall winner. Then I had several winners in 2003. Then, it started to compound. And what I did was, when I started that process of FST7 and then putting it out there through our articles that we would do together.
Yeah.
And what I thought would happen was going to be people were going to try this and they're going to realize that it works. But
Mm.
did I think that it was going to proliferate and really blow up to this magnitude where I've walked into the gym and it was probably a couple of years ago and somebody was doing flies and he was on his iPhone timing and he goes and I go, hey, can I work in? And the guy's like, no, man, I'm timing myself. I'm doing this FST7. And the guy doesn't even know, like, you know. And then I turned around and I go, hey, bro, that whole FST thing is bullshit, right? And I totally, you know, and it was at the gym here in San Jose. And I told him, I go, this is all bullshit. And the guy, you know, he was so mad. He goes, man, no, dude, I'm doing this program. You don't even know. Like, look at you, look at me. I'm amazing. You're, you know, you're not a bodybuilder. And I just laughing, right? And then I let him do his set. He finished up. And then he walked away. And the other guy that he was working out with that didn't happen to be working in with him at the time, he went and told him, he goes, yeah, man, that guy is a dick. You know, he turned around and he's talking shit about FSC7. He goes, who? He goes, that guy right there. And he says, the guy with the Evogen shirt on? He goes, that's the guy that created it. And he's like, no way, really? And he didn't believe it. And I go, yeah. Man. And he comes over, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I go, no, man, I was the one that was busting your balls. So right. It was good, but it was a classic story that the guy was doing FSC7 and he didn't even know who I was. And so it's really totally outgrown me. It's outgrown, you know, that, which is great. And I see in text, I mean, I get DMs every day about people using FST7 saying that they've really helped break their plateaus with it. But you and I used to joke about it where people used to sit there and just rag on it. Yeah. And now there's forums and they have their own section in a lot of the training forums regarding FST7.
Yeah, you know, in many training articles since then that I've written, I've referenced it because a lot of people can't get pumps for whatever reason. Maybe it's mind-muscle connection, whatever the case may be. I said, try sevens from FST7. If you can't get a pump with FST7, check your pulse. You're probably a zombie. You're probably already dead. But it's come in handy it's helped a lot of people. I know that for sure because I've had people come back to me and say, thanks for recommending that. I said, well, I would just pass it. I didn't come up with it. It was Hany Rambod. I didn't, you know, I'm just I'm stealing info like I always do. That's my thing. But you also just started a podcast called, is it The Truth with Hany Rambod?
Correct.
Yeah. So how did this come about? When did you get the idea for that?
I didn't. It was actually Phil Heath. Phil Heath. And the person that pushed me through it to actually execute on it was Andy Frisella. And Andy, for the people that in bodybuilding who don't know Andy, he's a big podcaster. He had the MF CEO, and that podcast has done really, really well. And now he's on to Real AF. And he does really, really well on podcasts. He does everything from nutrition to motivation, but he's very in that motivational business space, entrepreneurial space. And so as him and I were working together, and as Phil was constantly telling me, hey, bro, you really need to talk like you're talking to me. You need to put this stuff on this platform. And so he was the guy that constantly would chip away and say, what's going on? What's going on? When are you going to do it? You know what we're talking about right now? What are you doing? You know, and there's so many subjects that I have not really spoken about. And as you know, I turned away podcasts, I've turned away interviews because of just always trying to be either politically correct or just trying to focus on other things that I felt were more important. With the situation with the pandemic and the fact that we were in lockdown, it's allowed me to kind of focus on certain projects that I've always give thought to, but I've never been able to really execute on because of my travel schedule. Mm-hmm. Because as you know, again, all around the world to be meeting with either distributors or doing seminars or doing different types of trade shows. And with this being in lockdown, I'm like, okay, I don't have access to a gym. The gyms are closed. I have access to my office. So let's throw together a podcast studio and let's just let it rip. And I thought I was going to possibly do one or two. We did the first couple and we got a lot of really good feedback. And then I said, hey, one of the guys at the office is like, well, who do you have in the Rolodex? Yeah. And, because, it's really hard to get guests. And I go, I know a couple of people. So I called up my good friend, Ronnie Coleman.
He's good.
A few of you might know. So, yeah. And Ronnie and I had a really great relationship, and we still do, but we went on all those trips that you know about.
Yeah.
We got to dig up from the archives all the vacations that I did. So I'm like, hey, we could talk about this. We could talk about that, about some of the things that he didn't talk about on Rogan. So I said, let me give a different, a little different perspective on some of the people that people know, who they think they know who these people are.
Yeah.
So the first one was actually Seth Feroce, because Seth, I turned him pro. I helped him with his amateur show, the Pittsburgh Pro, his second show ever.
Yeah.
His next show, I got him his pro card, and we did the nationals. And let's tell about the stories. And he's so animated, and we start going back and forth, and we ended up doing the podcast together. It was like two hours of just, everybody loved it, because we went into how he got his pro card, what he did, the mindset, how he stepped away, what happened, why did he step away? All of those things, we were able to get that done literally in my third episode, because the first two were just like my background of how I got started as a trainer. And third episode, which was the first guest, which was Seth, he went into a lot of details because he hasn't spoken about any of those things. So we were able to pull up some images and some pictures from the check-ins when Dave Palumbo and some of those guys were there during the check-ins, and we were able to kind of show that to some of the audience too on the podcast. So that's on YouTube, as well as on download on iTunes and Spotify. And so we've had Branch Warren talking about him taking second to Jay into 09, as well as his work ethic and his mentality of how he turns around and kills it. As you know, he literally wants to murder the weights, just like he's murdering a boar. The guy, he's talking about how I knew about the spear. I knew about how he would sometimes hunt with guns and with bow and arrows.
Yeah.
And I remember one time him telling me that he went to a hunt and they used knives. And I'm just like, most brutal thing ever. And he goes, oh yeah, it's not a spear. And I'm like, it's like something out of 300.
Yeah.
So, we did an hour and a half podcast. That was awesome. And then started adding in the Q&A component. So that's what the Truth Podcast on my personal channel is about. I really try to highlight people that I've known in the industry, whether it's a personal relationship because I've worked with them, or something where we've talked, we just know each other. And I would just really enjoying it.
Who's your dream guest? Some of them would probably be tough to get. Could be a celebrity, a bodybuilder, anybody, but who would be your dream ultimate guest?
I think the ultimate guest would probably be The Rock, because he doesn't podcast. Right. He doesn't, at least not yet. I haven't seen him on Rogan. Nope. I haven't seen that, where Ronnie and Dorian and a couple of others that were in the industry have done, the Rogan podcast, which is probably one of the most popular podcasts out there. Yeah. But in terms of a dream guest, because again, he's just so real. So I think that if I had to choose one person, I would probably say that it would be him, because the accessibility is super tight. And I think that would be somebody that a lot of people would love to hear from. Absolutely. Especially because he's also trains like a bodybuilder. The guy trains like he's getting ready for the Olympia all the time. So as you see from his Instagram, the guy is jacked as fuck. And he's getting ready for the DC Black Adam and that Black Adam role. So he's getting really jacked for that. And I think that there's some crossover over there. But absolutely. Again, yeah. So that would be the person.
Cool. What's the YouTube channel where people can catch all these?
If you just type in Hany Rambod, the podcast, or Hany Rambod, it's my personal page. Okay. Evogen has its own page, which is actually has done really well. I think we're almost at 300,000 subscribers on the Evogen YouTube, and mine's just about to hit 200,000. But I only have about 25 videos on mine, and half of them have come in the last 6 weeks with the podcast, 6 to 8 weeks with the podcast. So that's, like I said, the downloadable portion comes in a couple days before the podcast does. I'm sorry, before the YouTube version does. Yep. So that's what I've been really focusing on is right now is getting that done, and then hopefully trying to get out to see Phil soon and get Hadi out here. And then obviously the other person that I know you're not a huge men's physique aficionado, but Andre was one of my clients and is also an Evogen athlete. He's living in the UK right now, and Andre's, having a tough time also like everybody else getting over here.
What the heck's he doing over there?
He's from there. He's actually lives
Oh.
there, and he's originally from Romania, but he lives outside of London.
Andre Ferguson is originally from
not
Romania?
Ferguson, Andre Du. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
Andre
Andre
Ferguson.
Du.
Andre
Du.
Du. Okay.
So in Andre, we did our first pro show together in Romania last year, and he ended up winning that, qualifying for the Olympia. So this is going to be his first Olympia. But for such a young kid whose body's changing, he's put on about 20 pounds of muscle, and he's got a shitload of followers. The kid, the guy's got like 3.5 million followers on Instagram, and he does, a lot of modeling when he was younger. So he's got a big following all over the world. But I'm looking forward to seeing hurry up and get his butt over here too. So between Hadi getting him over and him getting him over and doing all of these things, it's literally juggling like 8 different balls in the air while we're trying to get this Olympia underway. And now they're saying that the Olympia may or may not have an expo. I think they're going to change the expo component to it.
Yeah.
And then they don't know if there's going to be masks, because right now masks are mandated, but that might change by then. So I'm hoping that does. So we'll see. Either way, they're going to make it work, man.
Yeah, of course.
And the show still must go on.
Let's not forget you're raising what is he, 8 years old now, your son?
Yep, he's going to be 8 in May. So he's 7 now, and we're also homeschooling. We had Zoom earlier this morning.
Oh no.
So yeah, he's 2nd grade. Yeah.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, your kids are all older now.
Oh, they're 21 and 26. Thank God. Yeah. My son's Zoom. He's in college on Zoom, but it's, I don't have to deal with it. You got to sit there and supervise, I'm guessing, right?
Well, my wife does most of the time, but I'm usually there when, to fill in. And then I work from home as much as I can because of the fact that the schools aren't opening till, they say, at the very earliest January out here. So that's what, so we're working. It's all workarounds, brother. It's all workarounds right now. Everyone's going through it. And the final thing, I really want everybody who's listening to this to understand that there's a lot of anxiety right now going on, and there's a lot of depression going on. And if you guys can just take the time to get outside and exercise or train, you're going to minimize that. And I know a lot of people, because you get tired because you're up late, you're on YouTube, you're on this, and then you're stimmed up, and then it creates more anxiety. So my biggest takeaway to people that are constantly DMing me about, hey, how do I deal with my anxiety, is to exercise, try to eat as clean as possible. Again, cheat meals are good, but just making sure you're exercising to get that taken care of, because the anxiety is a real thing. There's people who have been literally anxiety-free their whole life. Right now, with all the things that are going on, and they've been cooped up for so long. And then on top of that, with the West having the fires where you couldn't even go outside to do cardio, and the gyms were also closed. It's just find something to do to burn that off, to get that anxiety off, because it's way better than natural. It's like better than Prozac. It's natural Prozac. So just find a way to try to clean up the diet a bit so that doesn't put you in a funk, and then make sure you're getting hydrated and you're going out there and you're training off the anxiety, because again, it's a real thing right now. Absolutely.
Thanks for that. And I know you're an extremely busy guy. Ever since I've known you, you've been workaholic, work around the clock. I remember times I'd be at the Olympia. I'm like, how much sleep have you got? You'd say, it'd be like Friday. Said, I've had 3 hours sleep since Tuesday. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, because I know your time is very, very limited. You got a lot of things on your plate. So thank you so much, Hany. And best of luck with the company, with the new podcast, and getting these athletes over here. We need everybody at the Olympia. We need them here. Come on, guys.
We do. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I'll definitely promise to come back, and hopefully we'll see everybody at the Olympia. Guys, go out there, support bodybuilding, because without you guys, we don't have a sport.
True. All right. Well, thank you, Hany. Everybody, thanks for watching Ronline Report with this man. We called him the Pro Creator. He's so much more now. Hany Rambod. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.